Hey everyone, it's your girl Annie, and I have got such exciting news to share with you. I am officially going on tour. That's right, Serialously with Annie Elise is hitting the road and coming to you live in a city near you. We have got so many amazing stops lined up. We are going to be hitting San Diego, California, Phoenix, Salt Lake City, Denver, Colorado, Brea, California. Such an incredible show with brand new exclusive cases, Q&As. It is going to be so good. But tickets are limited. All of the details are at annieelise.com. Just head over to the events page. So grab your bestie, grab your tickets, come see me. I can't wait to talk all things true crime with all of you guys, and I will see you on the stage. Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of 10 to Life with me, Annie Elise. I hope you guys are all having a good day so far today, even though I'm about to swoop in and dump all over it. But I've got another true crime case that I need to talk with you about. Now, I don't know about you, but something I find really frustrating is when a murder is committed for seemingly no reason at all. Obviously, there's never a good reason for outright murder, but when people can't even explain why they did what they did, it can be especially frustrating. In today's case, someone is killed, and investigators have never been able to determine why this person was killed. They know who did it, but not why it was done. And this lack of reason makes people second guess whether the right person was even arrested. There's a lot to go over, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys think about this case and what you think the motive could have been. So guys, let's jump right in. Okay, so I feel like we can all agree that getting in debt is so easy. Getting out of it feels like the system is actually set up so that we never do. And the anxiety of it all, the stress of it all, it can just be devastating and absolutely soul-crushing. I get all of that. And I'm here to say you don't have to go at it alone. There is a way out. Help is available. All thanks to today's sponsor, PDS Debt. Now, PDS Debt has customized options for anybody who is struggling with credit cards, personal loans, collections, even medical bills. They truly care about getting you out of debt. And everybody with over $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies. And get this, there's no minimum credit score required. Bad and fair credit is accepted. PDS Debt really strives to understand your specific scenario, and they can help provide alternative solutions to becoming debt-free. I mean, they truly care about helping you get out of debt. I wish I knew about this program sooner because it would have saved me a lot of stress, a lot of money back when I was younger and I was like, oh, I'm going to upgrade and get all these airline miles so that I can fly first or business. I just need this credit card, and you know how that goes. You just spiral, and before you know it, you've got all this debt. You can't get your way out. But I am sharing it now with you, so hopefully they can help you if you are struggling. Save more in interest and fees, and stop waiting. Start saving. Get a free debt analysis right now at pds.com/10tolife. It only takes 30 seconds. Go check it out, guys. You will not regret it. Rosario Porto was born in July of 1969 to a very wealthy family in Spain. She grew up in the city of Santiago, and her father was a respected lawyer and an honorary consul of France, which is like a volunteer but an elite position where you help maintain the different relations between two countries. So in this case, it was Spain and France. Her mother was a highly regarded art history professor, and her parents were successful, wealthy, and happy. And Rosario lived a very comfortable childhood. If she wanted something, she basically got it. Now, Rosario attended multiple private schools during her childhood. As a young adult, she wanted to go to college and she wanted to study psychology. However, her parents wanted her to follow in her father's footsteps and study law. So she did what her parents wanted her to do, something that she had really done all of her life. Always follow their direction, always follow their rules. She went to multiple different schools and she studied all throughout Europe. In 1990, while she was studying at the University of Santiago, that's when she met a guy named Alfonso Bastera. Alfonso was 5 years older than Rosario, and he had moved to Santiago a couple of years prior. They met through mutual friends. He had a degree in journalism, and he also had a failed career in radio because apparently his voice wasn't good enough. Now, one friend even compared his voice to what they described as a dead mosquito, brutal, harsh. He found success as a writer for a large newspaper in the area, and he was a much better match for Rosario than her previous partners. Because as I mentioned, Rosario usually did pretty much everything that her parents wanted her to do. And I say usually because before meeting Alfonso, she was dating a railroad worker, and much to her parents' disapproval at that, to them he was just a blue-collar worker and was not good enough for their daughter, and it was a really, contentious point for them. So she ended up breaking up with him, and that's when she started dating Alfonso. So they were a good match, and they were a perfect example of opposites attract, because Rosario had this dark hair that was cut into a bob, she was very petite, she was stereotypically beautiful, while Alfonso, well, he was more on the nerdy side. He was tall, kind of gangly, he had close cropped hair and glasses. Rosario was much more personable and outgoing than Alfonso as well. She was friendly and a very passionate, very expressive person, while Alfonso was more quiet, easygoing, patient. Now, Rosario having this more outgoing personality made a lot of their friends think that she's the one who kind of wore the pants in their relationship. However, that wasn't necessarily true, because Alfonso was more domineering and decisive when the two of them were alone. He was the type of person who wouldn't budge if he had his mind made up on something. The two of them ended up getting married in 1996. The same year, Rosario graduated from law school and started working at her father's law firm. She also inherited the role of Consul of France from her father. So they settled down in Santiago, the town that Rosario had spent her whole life in, and they were about to build their life together. Now, Rosario was determined to live in Santiago because people knew her there. She often told family and friends how she didn't like living in other countries during her college years because nobody knew who her family was. And to put it simply, she was used to being treated like a celebrity almost. In Santiago, she and Alfonso became a very well-known couple. They lived a lavish lifestyle. They lived in a huge apartment, as a matter of fact, that was gifted to Rosario by her family. And guys, this was huge. It was the entire 4th floor of an apartment building. And the apartment building was in an area of Santiago called the VIP zone, all because so many wealthy people lived there. They painted their place in all different colors, and Rosario filled it with very expensive pieces of art and furniture. Overall, they were living a very comfortable and fun life. They went to parties, nice dinners, spent time with friends, and seemed to have everything that they could ever want. Except they didn't, because one thing that was missing from their life was a child. As a couple, they were able to have children. Neither of them suffered from fertility problems. However, Rosario did suffer from lupus, which is an autoimmune condition. And because of that, her physicians advised against pregnancy. So Rosario and Alfonso started looking into adoption. They knew that they were going to be great parents, and they wanted to raise a child that was surrounded by a loving family and give them as many opportunities as they could, the same opportunities that they had had. However, adoption in the area that they lived, it was very expensive and very complicated. So instead, they started looking to adopt from China. And in June 2001, they actually traveled to China to adopt a child. They were extremely excited, Rosario in particular. She was hardly getting any sleep in the days leading up to the adoption because she was just so excited. When all was said and done, they adopted a 9-month-old baby girl named Asunta Fong Yang. Asunta was from Guangzhou, China, and unfortunately she was given up by her birth parents because she was a girl. At the time, the one-child policy was still in effect in China, and many people gave up their babies if they were girls. It's horrible, I know. Now, Asunta's full name ended up being Asunta Yang Fang Beresta Porto, because Rosario and Alfonso wanted to keep her full original name, but they also wanted to add both of their last names, which in Spain is normal for parents to do. Asunta and Rosario bonded almost immediately. Rosario was in her mid-30s at this point, and she was so happy to just finally be a mother. And Asunta was a fairly easy baby. She did have her fair share of stomach issues and fevers, but she'd always get over them pretty quickly. Asunta was the first child in the city of Santiago to be adopted from China as well. And because of that, the couple received quite a bit of attention. In a good way, though. They were praised by their community. A local news station even interviewed them about their adoption experience. In the interview, Rosario said that the adoption is just as satisfying as giving birth. It's for life. It's just like a biological birth. She recommended adoption to everybody as long as they really wanted to be a parent and were willing to make the lifelong commitment. And Asunta was the center of her parents' universe. Alfonso started working as a freelance writer so that he could be home more, and he was the primary caretaker while Rosario continued to work as a lawyer at her father's legal practice.
Una familia feliz. A un padre, Alfonso Basterra, que juega con su hija.
They made sure that Asunta always had the best of the best. She had her own private doctors, multiple tutors, went to the best schools. Many of the private schools that she went to were the same ones that Rosario attended as a child too. Asunta had private lessons in English, Chinese, and French. She already spoke 2 languages. She also attended German school, and on top of this, she had private lessons in ballet, violin, piano, the recorder, and even singing. I mean, ultra talented.
Una virtuosa niña de 12 años capaz de tocar la pandereta, el violín, la flauta, el piano y cantar al mismo tiempo. Son las imágenes que muestran lo brillante.
Asunta even skipped a grade by the time that she reached middle school. I mean, she was busy, and one time she even told her ballet teacher that she barely had any time to herself. She said that her Saturday schedule was as follows: 7 a.m. wake up, 8 to 10 a.m. Chinese lessons, 10:15 to 12:15 ballet lessons, French lessons after ballet, then lunch, then violin lessons, and then piano lessons. And like I said, this was just a normal Saturday for Asunta. Many people thought that Rosario and Alfonso were trying to create the perfect child, but Asunta herself said that she wanted to do all of these things. She was a happy kid. She was fairly shy with strangers, but she came out of her shell when she was at home, and she was actually a little bit of a tomboy. She always had preferred jeans over skirts and trucks over dolls. She was also very close with her grandparents, the one on Rosario's side. She loved her nanny, Carmen. Asunta loved to play all sorts of practical jokes on her family too, and she would prance around in the house in different dance costumes. I mean, just a truly happy girl. They seemed like the perfect family, which if you've been listening to this channel for a while, you would know that anybody who is ever described as a perfect family is hardly ever perfect. Rosario suffered from many mental health issues. In 2009, she had to spend a few nights in a private psychiatric hospital because she hadn't been doing very well. Rosario felt like she was never enough for her parents, and she always felt like she had to do more or prove herself. Her mind was racing all the time, and she said that she had begun to think about ending her own life because of this. While she was at the psychiatric hospital, Rosario told her psychiatrist that taking care of Asunta had started to become a lot. She said that Asunta was a bother, and that she got irritated with her often. In 2011, Rosario started thinking about sending Asunta away to a private school in London. She thought that maybe it would be a great opportunity for Asunta to be more challenged in school, to improve her English, and honestly get the experience of a lifetime. But it was a little bit strange that she felt that way, because Rosario had done something similar when she was a teenager, and she hadn't enjoyed that experience at all. She spent some time going to school in England, and she hated it. And it was because, like I mentioned, Rosario didn't like living in places where people didn't know who she was, or, better yet, who her family was. She felt like she didn't get the special treatment that she deserved at these schools. Yet she wanted Asunta to go to these same schools. It was strange. However, the plans ended up falling through. In 2011, Rosario's mother died, and 7 months later, so did her father. They both died of old age and natural causes, but their deaths were really hard for Rosario because she had been very close with her parents. They had lived close by, and she used to spend a lot of time with them. The stress of their deaths was really hard on her. She closed her dad's legal practice, gave up her position as that honorary consul of France, and she started working as a freelance legal consultant. And then things became even more difficult for the family in 2013. On January 5th, Alfonso got into Rosario's email account and he went through all of her emails. Now, while I'm not sure what made him think this way, he did have a suspicion that Rosario was cheating on him. And those suspicions were confirmed when he found emails between Rosario and a man named Manuel Garcia. Rosario had met Manuel when he hired her as a legal consultant. She went on a lot of business trips with him, and that's how their relationship began. Rosario liked that Manuel was so different from Alfonso, because over the years, Rosario thought that Alfonso had become soft. That was her term. He was barely getting any work as a freelancer. He was home all the time, and she felt that it hurt their public image. In contrast, Manuel, who had a wife and kids, by the way, was this successful businessman. He was strong, confident, assertive, and really everything that Alfonso wasn't. But she and Manuel knew that their relationship was never going to be anything serious. They had no intention of ending their marriages to be with one another. Still, Alfonso was furious when he discovered the emails between them. He kicked a hole in the door and became really physically aggressive with Rosario. She told him that he needed to leave the apartment, but he refused to do so. And Rosario refused to call the police. Eventually, Rosario got a few of her friends together to confront Alfonso. They made her feel more confident approaching him, so she had packed up all of his things for him, gave him a bunch of money to convince him to leave, and he eventually did after 3 days, and he went to go live with his family. But Alfonso wouldn't leave Rosario alone. He just kept bombarding her with emails. And like I said earlier, Alfonso had been the primary caregiver and homemaker. He knew all the home maintenance things that needed to be done, what meals to cook for Asunta, the bills that needed to be paid, things like that. Rosario was completely out of her element when it came to those things. She had always worked full-time. One of her friends said that Rosario didn't even know how to cook a hard-boiled egg or make toast. And Alfonso, he used this to his advantage. He knew that Rosario would get really stressed out having to work full-time and be the full-time caregiver. So he would send her email after email, just reminding her of everything that needed to be done around the house. In one of these emails, he wrote, "I'm writing you this email to give you a bit more work, just in case you don't already have enough. Various things. In the meat drawer, there is a piece of pork that Lisa brought. Put it in the freezer. There are also some vegetables. Get Carmen to wash them. Remember to call Sabella on the 20th to take Asunta for her vaccination on the 24th. You'll have to take her again on the 24th of June, but that will be the last one. On the magnet in the hall, there is an invitation for Asunta to go skating this month. Don't forget that the ice rink is open until 3 in February. As for Carmen's invoices, it's very easy. Go to her file, get the most recent one and a blank copy, and fill it in with the data on the other one. As you run out of the blank copies, do photocopies. And if the gardeners want to prepare a bonfire, all you have to do is call the town council of Tio and ask them for the regional government telephone for bonfire permits. You can do it all by phone. It's very easy. All they ask you, apart from the personal details, is what parish you belong to. I'm leaving on Saturday morning. Don't bother sending me any emails because one of these days I'm going to cancel this account. Even though it might sound pathetic, and I suppose even more humiliating for me, my only purpose in life was to look after you and grow old at your side. Sorry, but it's not easy for me to stop loving you." So this was just one part of one of the emails that he sent to her, and he did this constantly. However, just a month after finding out about the affair, the divorce was finalized. Alfonso was still having a very hard time dealing with it too, and he sent Rosario even more and more emails. He demanded money from her, a car, even said that he was going to quit his freelance job and make her give him money every single month. He had gotten used to living this lavish life with Rosario, and he felt like now his social status was ruined. So in another email, he wrote, "I have tons of dignity, and I don't know if others can say the same. So after being forced to sign a divorce contract in just a few hours when I still don't really know why things had to turn out like that, and after being thrown out of the house that I lived in for years as if I had this plague, after losing my job and finding out that my wife had been cheating on me for several months, telling me all kinds of lies right to my face, and after not being able to see my daughter, you might understand how I feel, although I doubt it." So Rosario, who usually ignored all of his emails, replied with, "Alfonso, I'm not going to argue with you. I'm very tired. If you want to believe me, fine. If not, it would hurt me. I can't deny it. But there's nothing else I can do. I know it bothers you, but I do want to thank you for your help in reminding me about the unavoidable things that I could forget about. And if you let me, I'm going to ask you something. Understand my pain, accept my apologies, and please don't get angry about these words. As for the things you have asked me to send you, no problem, but give me a couple of days to get organized." Then, in a different email to a friend, Rosario wrote, "I am now a divorced woman, and I have been since February 14th, 2013. I think it was the quickest divorce in the history of the world. I applied on January 14th, and the sentence came out on February 14th. Sensations, vertigo and lightness, although more than anything else, relief. Alfonso still hasn't gotten it. He goes from playing the victim to being aggressive. It's exhausting. Asunta took it all very naturally and is showing a really good attitude to the new situation. The truth is that Alfonso is doing things really well so far as Asunta is concerned, and that helps a lot, so we have to give him his due. I am still seeing Manuel. March 14th is his birthday. It was the first anniversary of our clandestine relationship, and for the occasion, this presumably tough guy chose Agadir to celebrate, the place where it all started. I imagine a business trip was his alibi with his family. We were together from the 12th to the 22nd. So Asunta really was seeming to take their divorce pretty well. There isn't much information about how she truly felt during this time, but her dad ended up getting a small apartment near her and her mom so that she could see them both and maintain as much normalcy as possible. Asunta could easily walk between the two apartments and equally split her time between both parents, and Alfonso and Rosario tried to get along as best as they could for Asunta's sake. The one thing that they had in common was that they wanted the best for her. However, in June of 2013, Rosario was hospitalized. She had become overwhelmed after the divorce, and her mental health rapidly deteriorated. Her depression was the worst that it had ever been. Her depression was so bad that she could barely function. She was constantly dizzy, had a difficult time walking, her eyes were always drooping, so she stayed in the hospital until early July 2013. Rosario knew that she couldn't do everything alone. Alfonso had come to see her at the hospital, and they made a deal with each other. Alfonso would be the primary caregiver and homemaker again, all as long as Rosario agreed to cut off her relationship with Manuel. And they agreed. Alfonso kept his own apartment, but he spent most of the time with Rosario and Asunta. He and Rosario weren't back together necessarily, he just took care of her, Asunta, and the house. However, things with Asunta got really weird after her mom left the hospital. She was tired and extremely lethargic, constantly. It was really noticeable because it was so unlike her usual behavior. Then on July 4th, Rosario heard some strange noises in the middle of the night. She went to Asunta's room and she found a man standing over her bed with his hands around her throat. Rosario ran towards this man, but once he noticed her, he pushed her out of the way and he fled the house. Rosario couldn't see the guy very well, but he was short, muscular, and wearing all black. He was also wearing black latex gloves. Rosario found that someone had left their house keys in the front door lock, which is how this stranger got inside. However, Rosario never called the police about this incident. Asunta texted a friend that somebody had tried to, kill her that night, but she didn't say much else about what had happened. She also told the story to a different friend, and the friend's mom overheard. So now this mom confronted Rosario and said, you need to report this incident. Rosario agreed and finally went to the police station. However, she never actually filed a police report or told them what happened. But she told the mother of Asunta's friend that she had filed a police report. On July 9th, things continued to get weird with Asunta. She went to her music lessons and her teacher noticed that she was uncharacteristically tired. She wasn't playing well and seemed half asleep. The music teacher brought it up to her parents, and Alfonso said that she was just having a bad reaction to some allergy medications that she had to take. But it kept on happening. Whenever people saw Asunta, she was extremely drowsy. On July 22nd, she was at her music lessons again, and she could barely stand upright, let alone walk. So her teacher asked her, what is going on? And Asunta said that her mother gave her a bad-tasting white powder that made her sleep for a very long time. At the end of July, Asunta went to stay at a local beach resort with her godmother. It gave her an opportunity to be away from all the crazy stuff that had been happening, and it gave Alfonso more time to help Rosario recover. So Asunta stayed with her godmother until late August, and her behavior and her demeanor, it went back to normal. She wasn't super tired all the time, and nothing weird was happening. She went back to being the happy kid that she always had been. Which was great because this girl wasn't even 13 years old. I mean, she was young, healthy, vibrant, surely should not be having any sort of medical issues. However, right when she got back to her parents, the dizziness started all over again. She was lethargic all the time. At 10:17 p.m. on September 21st, 2013, Rosario and Alfonso called the police. They reported that Asunta was missing. Rosario told the police officers that she had left their apartment around 7 p.m. that night, while Asunta stayed home doing homework. Rosario said that she drove 20 minutes outside the city to the family's country house, and that she got back to the apartment in the city around 9:30. But when she got home, Asunta wasn't there. She called Alfonso and Asunta's friends, but nobody had seen her. So investigators got to work immediately looking for Asunta. And almost immediately, they discovered that Rosario was not telling the truth. They obtained CCTV footage that showed Rosario and Asunta at a gas station at 6:20 p.m. Then they left the gas station and headed in the direction of their country home. So they showed Rosario this footage, and that's when her story changed. She said she initially took Asunta with her to the country house, but then brought her back to their apartment when Asunta said that she wanted to go home and do homework. Rosario said that after she dropped Asunta off, she went to a sporting goods store to buy something for her ballet class, but she realized she forgot her purse, so she didn't actually go inside. She said she drove back to the country home, got her purse, and then went to get gas, but she realized that she couldn't because she didn't have her gas discount card. However, investigators scoured even more CCTV footage, and they found that Rosario was nowhere near the places that she said she had been. She didn't go to the sporting goods store, and she didn't ever go back to that gas station. So early in the morning on September 22nd, investigators told Rosario and Alfonso what they found on the CCTV footage. Nothing Rosario said matched what the camera showed, so Rosario then told them about that incident with that man strangling Asunta back in July, claiming he might be involved. The investigators asked Rosario why she never reported that first incident, and she said it was because things like that rarely ever get solved, plus nothing was missing from the house, so she didn't think that it was that big of a deal, which, what do you mean, that big of a deal? If I ever heard a noise and walked into my child's bedroom and saw a stranger strangling them, first and foremost, the first thing I'd probably do is shoot the fucker. Sorry, but honestly, I would 100% call the police and file a police report. Like, I would never say it wasn't a big deal. Things like this never get solved. Plus, nothing was missing from the house. Who cares if something was missing from the house? Who cares if everything was missing from the house? Somebody tried to kill your daughter. So Alfonso said that on the day that Asunta went missing, things were normal in the afternoon. He said that Rosario was at a, quote, work conference, which actually she was out on a date with Manuel. So because of this, Asunta ended up staying with Alfonso. He says that she studied at his apartment, then they played card games, and they watched TV. But then Alfonso made some really strange comments to the investigators. He said that he hoped that Asunta hadn't been sexually assaulted or killed. And that comment was just a little too specific, which is why it stood out to investigators. Sure, nobody would ever want that, but nobody would ever say something like that, right? So just hours later, a man and his friend were leaving a bar. They were driving down a hidden country road when they saw something in the trees that looked like a scarecrow that had fallen over. So they stopped the car, pointed their headlights towards this area, and they discovered that it wasn't a scarecrow. It was a body. A young Asian girl was lying on the ground in a bunch of pine needles. Her gray sweatpants were covered in mud. She was wearing a white t-shirt that was pulled halfway up her stomach. She didn't have any shoes or socks on, and there was a large wet stain around her crotch area. There was also bloody mucus that had pooled under her nose. The men felt for a pulse, but discovered that there wasn't one, so they called the police. When the police arrived, they immediately knew that this was Asunta. There were very, very few Asian people who lived in this area, and she was one of the only ones who had also been reported as missing. Plus, she looked just like these pictures of Asunta that her parents had provided. There was very little evidence found around the body, though. There were no fingerprints or fibers. However, there was some orange twine that was next to her body. Based on marks around her wrists and ankles, they assumed that this twine was used to bind her arms and legs. After her body was found, police started calling the investigation Operation Water Lily, because apparently when Asunta's body was found, the moon was still out, and the way that the moonlight was shining on her white t-shirt made her look like this floating flower that was floating just above the ground. Alfonso, Rosario, and everybody close to the family was just distraught, devastated. Asunta was such a happy girl with such a bright future ahead of her. Who would ever want to do something like this to her? Rosario's apartment and the country house had been momentarily blocked off so that the police could go in and investigate and see if there was any sort of evidence of somebody breaking into either home. At one point, investigators brought Rosario back to the country home, although it's unclear why. Once they were there, the investigators told Rosario not to touch anything, but she said that she needed to use the bathroom, so they did let her inside. She was taking a little longer than what seemed necessary, so the investigators went in to find her. and they found Rosario in an upstairs bedroom pulling something out of the trash. And it ended up being a large piece of orange twine. It looked just like the twine that was found near Asunta's body, although the investigators were never able to determine whether or not this twine came from the same roll. Still, it was obviously really suspicious. On top of that, investigators found a couple of poems that Asunta wrote about her mother. Rosario had said, remember, she had this great relationship with Asunta. But these poems, they prove the opposite. One of them went like this: "My mother is greedy, but she is not pretty. She is short, but she is not nice. She sings horrible. She cooks with only salt. She eats worse, drinks better, has little flexibility, but is old. Doesn't know how to talk, but knows how to scold. Knows how to yell, but not to ramble." In another poem that Asunta wrote, it seemed to imply that her mother had a drug problem. It read, "Her smile as brilliant as the sun, her mouth deep and beautiful. She loved the light green and white cabbage, and also bright white cocaine. There was so much love in my heart that I could hear my restless wrist tremble. Yesterday she laughed and cried, but it was just a single, short, dry tear. That beautiful slim figure wanted to cure her addiction to cocaine. I insisted on this with her, and she did it. As a reward, I painted a portrait of her, and in the end, she happily accepted it." Investigators then discovered text messages that Asunta had sent to her friends during that period where she was always dizzy and drowsy, and in one of these messages, she had sent a friend saying, "I'm nervous. Today, they intend to kill me." They also discovered numerous messages from Asunta to Rosario where Asunta was complaining about being really tired. Investigators had already interviewed Asunta's music teachers, and they made similar comments about Asunta being very tired since that June. On September 24th, a large funeral was held for Asunta. There were a lot of people in attendance. However, Rosario was acting a little strange, almost too dramatic. Now, obviously, a parent is going to be incredibly upset when their child dies. But Rosario was crying, flailing herself around, falling to the floor, and it just seemed performative. None of her actions seemed genuine. Rosario also had one of Manuel's friends guard the door to the area where the viewing for Asunta's body was taking place. She made this friend act like a bodyguard, and he had to ask Rosario's permission to let people in the room. And she refused most people from seeing Asunta, only letting in some family and friends. Then things took a turn at this funeral, and things got even more weird. Police arrived, and to everybody's shock, they arrested Rosario. They arrested her for the murder of her daughter, Asunta. And the very next day, Alfonso was arrested as well. Both had told stories about the day of Asunta's disappearance that didn't match up with any of the CCTV footage. On top of that, their stories changed multiple times, and both of their phones were coincidentally turned off on the day that Asunta went missing. So the investigators weren't able to track their exact whereabouts. But to make matters worse, an autopsy was done, and it was discovered that Asunta had in fact been heavily drugged. She had 9 times the normal amount of Ativan in her system. And Ativan is a very powerful anti-anxiety drug, and it was found in her blood, urine, and hair. Hair actually holds evidence of drugs the longest, and the medical examiner found that the first 3 centimeters of Asunta's hair had traces of Ativan. Now, hair grows about 1 centimeter each month, so if the first 3 centimeters of her hair had traces of Ativan, investigators could safely assume that Asunta had been drugged with this for about 3 months. And coincidentally, that lined up with when people started noticing Asunta acting tired and drowsy all the time. It also lined up with when Rosario left that mental facility in early July, and when she left, she was given a prescription for Ativan. So as her caretaker, Alfonso had filled these prescriptions for Rosario and brought them to her. But the investigators discovered that he had gotten the drug from many places, not just the pharmacy. In the past 10 weeks, Alfonso had obtained over 175 pills of Ativan. Some he got through Rosario's prescription, some he got illegally, and others he obtained by lying to his own physician and getting a prescription for himself. And Asunta had been complaining to friends and teachers about her parents giving her some gross powder, some gross white powder to be exact, so it was all lining up. The police started to assume that they did drug her. They ground up the pills into a powder, and they had been force-feeding her to take it for the past 3 months, and they gave her so much that she suffocated to death. So now the police had a manner and cause of death, but they still didn't know what would make them do something so horrible, especially to their own daughter. After they were both arrested, Rosario and Alfonso were placed in cells near each other. Now, the investigators did this on purpose, and what they did when they did it is they set up a recording device near the cells. They hoped that the two of them would talk, and they hoped that they would reveal more information about what had happened. They never said anything that directly implicated themselves, but there were a few strange comments. First, detectives noticed that Alfonso was a lot more belligerent than he was made out to be. Alfonso was always considered the calm one in the relationship, but in the clips, he frequently yelled at Rosario, telling her to be quiet. At one point, Rosario said to him, "Look what trouble your overheated imagination got us into," and Alfonso told her to shut up. Investigators initially thought that Rosario was the mastermind behind everything, but seeing how Alfonso behaved the way he did, it made them think otherwise. Now at this point, as I'm sure you can imagine, the media was going crazy reporting about this story. Fortunately, the investigation was pretty sloppy and information was being leaked constantly. And because of that, a lot of rumors began to spread. At one point, it was reported that Asunta's white t-shirt had semen stains on it. So this spread the rumor that Asunta was sexually harmed. However, it was discovered that her shirt had been contaminated in the evidence room, so she wasn't actually hurt in this way. But the media didn't let this go. Police later obtained Alfonso's computer, which magically showed up at his apartment after investigators had already looked for it, and they found a lot of strange things. He had saved thousands of sexually explicit pictures and videos, and all of these pictures were Asian women specifically. He was also friends with many Asian women on Facebook, all whom posted these sexual pictures of themselves. So that then started the rumor that Alfonso had a fetish for Asian women, and that he was sexually harming Asunta, that maybe that was even the reason they adopted Asunta. This was never confirmed, but it is believed by a lot of people. Alfonso and Rosario's trial began in 2015. Investigators created a timeline of events using CCTV footage as well as information obtained through their numerous interviews, and they presented this at trial, and they presented the timeline on the day that Asunta died. They said that at 1:55, Asunta left her mother's apartment. At 2 p.m., she passes a bank security camera and is seen walking towards her father's apartment. At 5:21, Asunta walks past that same camera headed toward her mom's apartment. At 6:12, Rosario is seen on camera entering her apartment garage. 6:22, Rosario is seen driving toward the country house. Asunta is in the passenger seat. 6:35, the alarm at the country house is turned off. Then the forensic team estimates that Asunta died between 7 and 8 p.m. At 8:53 p.m., the country house alarm is turned back on, and a neighbor sees Rosario enter her car but does not see Asunta. At 9 p.m., Alfonso is seen on that bank camera walking back and forth, and he passes the camera 9 times. Then at 10:31 p.m., Alfonso and Rosario report Asunta missing, and at 1:30 a.m., Asunta's body is found. Both Rosario and Alfonso were both found guilty of Asunta's murder. They were each sentenced to 18 years in prison. Alfonso will be released in 2033, but Rosario's time in prison, it actually ended sooner, because she attempted to end her life in February of 2017. She had taken a lot of sleeping pills and she was found unconscious. It turns out that she had been admitted to a mental facility and was secretly accumulating all these pills. She attempted again in November of 2018 because she tried hanging herself in the prison showers. However, another inmate appeared and saved her. In March of 2020, Rosario was transferred to another prison and she was put on self-harm watch. But she ended her own life months later in November of 2020, this time by hanging herself from a window with bed sheets. There are also people who don't truly believe that Rosario and Alfonso did it. I mean, the evidence against them is mostly circumstantial, and Alfonso still maintains his innocence. A motive for the crime was never really established either. Most think that Rosario and Alfonso just didn't want a child anymore. At their trial, a psychologist testified that Rosario talked about how being Asunta's mother was overwhelming, how she didn't want a parent anymore, she just wanted out. In fact, when the couple was younger, they expressed no desire to have kids. It almost seems like they did it to create the image that they were this perfect couple and a perfect family. Others believe that Alfonso was sexually hurting Asunta because he had a fetish for Asian women. They believe that he would purposefully drug her, then he would inflict the harm on her. Some say that he accidentally drugged her too much and that's what caused her to die. Some people also started to think that Rosario killed her own parents. I mean, she had expedited the cremation process of their bodies, and people think that the reason why was because she was trying to hide evidence. However, law enforcement has ruled this out and confirmed that they did die of natural causes. Nevertheless, people still don't believe it, and they think that Rosario killed them just to inherit the estate. Now, whatever you think, this case took Spain by storm. People made documentaries about what happened, and Netflix Spain even recently released a limited series about it. Alfonso actually sent a documentary producer a letter from jail which read, "When I regain my freedom, I have the firm intention of disappearing. No one will hear from me again. I only have one reason to stay alive, which is none other than to be a free man again and reunite with my girl. I've thought about how and where to end it. I just don't know when. But everything comes eventually." To me, this case just seems unfinished. I can't imagine why these parents did what they did. They were so involved in her life, always trying to do what was best for her. So what happened? Do you think they just got tired of having a kid? After all the work that they did to adopt and raise her, I mean, does that even make sense? Was one of them more responsible for what happened than the other, or do you think that somebody else did it? I'm interested to hear your thoughts because this case is heavily debated. Leave your comments below and let me know what you guys think, and thank you so much, as always, for hearing her story today. Until the next one, stay safe. Bye.